does the narcissist know and understand what they are doing to a victim? And the answer to this question is not a very simple answer, because that answer, it can be in most circumstances yes and no. And I know that some people may not like to hear that answer. And I do believe that there is a certain gray area where we may not know all of the answers all of the time. So we're going to start with the false self. And the biggest mistake that we can ever make when trying to understand how narcissistic people, how they run, how they operate, is to assign a type of lens of normal human behavior onto what narcissists do. This is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, as the narcissist operates through a false self, which is an egoic construction. The false self is ultimately a defense mechanism which avoids the real self. And the false self, again, with this strong egoic construction, it seeks significance, approval, and energy from the outside, as it cannot be made from the inside. And this false self is incredibly insecure. Its maintenance depends on getting regular reminders, daily, hourly, minute by minute reminders of how worthy, of value, and acceptable that it is. And the truth about this is that the false self has no ability to create, like I said, or maintain these feelings for itself. It is an empty vessel, an empty shell that forever needs filling, a gigantic, never-ending void that can never be satisfied. And it cannot receive outside information, settle on it, and be at peace with that information. And this is why these narcissists are in constant need of a constant, steady flow of narcissistic supply. If an individual knows who they are and does love and accept themselves, then they are able to detach from other people's assessments about them, because this person is not precariously reliant on their approval or their validation. And it makes sense, because the false self has no buffer or self-worth or self-acceptance to be criticized. Narcissists don't and can't detach from other people's feelings about them. They are totally susceptible to feedback from the outer world to establish this false identity. They're like a gigantic ball of the character traits of every person they've ever come across in their entire life. And this is why it is so critical for a narcissist. They need to ensure, create, and maintain the type of narcissistic supply that is going to fulfill the narcissist and allow him or her to repeatedly create a version of this false self that is bearable for the narcissist. And if it can't be approval or validation, fear will often do. And to make sure somebody is severely affected by the narcissist is valuable supply, because it validates that the narcissist exists. When operating in this defense mechanism mode, this is emotional survival for a narcissist. If something that the narcissist did could potentially receive criticism, the narcissist will swiftly switch into being non-accountable, because a false self cannot be held accountable. They'll project, they'll deflect the blame anywhere else but on themselves. And we know what we know as ridiculous correlations, childish excuses, bizarre tat for tat retaliations, and the creation of phony allies, malicious, unrelated dredging up of the past, extreme, out of proportion rage, and pathological lies are very valid and familiar to the narcissist. And it is his or her brain trying to latch on to some way or another to escape that accountability and that being wrong and suffering ultimate and emotional annihilation. This is how fragile these people are. And this is why we have seen all narcissists defend their arguments and twist and turn like a pretzel. And we got hooked into insane conversations that we believe no rational adult would have ever believed had we not been trauma bonded to this narcissist. And this narcissist, they're like an angry 5-year-old. They vehemently defend what we believe to be ludicrous and mentally deranged points or their facts. And I guess these descriptions of the narcissist, it really is the truth that we are looking at the narcissist like he or she has suddenly morphed into an alien with 2 heads, in utter dismay of how obvious facts are and how obvious really poor, immature, out of bounds behavior is. Yet truly, the narcissist can be simply clueless. His or her brain pathways are simply doing what they are programmed to do. So back to the, how does the false self, or something that doesn't really exist, do something wrong? It is important to understand that how can a false self, which is not real, have done anything wrong? How can a false self be held accountable? As a false self is a shield for the narcissist, and they are numb and strangely detached from the false self, and it really doesn't feel like him or her. The narcissist truly can't attach even to the emotion of the false self, and this is a mirage. And the narcissist has trouble connecting to having done something wrong, because again, that false self, how can you hold a false self accountable? And the fact that the narcissist, they deeply feel like a victim, that he or she is the one who was wronged, and believes these outrageous lies that they tell themselves in order to not be held accountable. That's the MO at the end of the day. And we need to realize that the narcissist version of being wrong is way different from our normal human version of being wrong. Because again, the narcissist, totally insecure, no true self, inner true self resources. Therefore, any criticism, real or imagined, is of enormous impact to the narcissist. In fact, association of the slight with previous unhealed traumas magnifies the event incredibly out of proportion. And the narcissist, they don't have the resources to heal any of the original wounds that they have disowned and have been categorized in some way egoically to avoid them instead. They cannot put current or future events into perspective, and they do not have the ability to not harbor or sit on things or react and blow what someone else did. They blow what someone else did hugely out of proportion. And in a way, it's kind of to divert that attention off of them again, so no accountability. And these narcissists, they live in the moment, much like children. And they're never in the moment. And he or she, they are a product of intense unhealed wounds from the past that continue to grow relentlessly. And these ignored wounds, they come up screaming for attention, and they are not going to go away. And the anxiety of being able to secure adequate narcissistic supply in the future in order to avoid emotional annihilation is what is on their mind 24/7, whether they know it or not. So now you may be able to kind of see why on earth this narcissist is sprouting about how bad you are in relation to the horrendous things that have gone down on the narcissist's behalf. Stuff which you could not have ever dreamed of happening or doing, let alone executed. Yet you are the bad one? Yes. From the narcissist version of reality, or from our version of reality. This is absolutely insane, and it drives us insane. From the narcissist version of reality, you did something terrible, and the narcissist was simply doing what was necessary as a defense, and then when forced into accountability, somehow projected what he or she did as something you did, and they truly believe this. And you must realize that the narcissist truly, whenever he or she thought these thoughts or justifications a few times, stated it to other people, normally during a smear campaign. And then the narcissist, in their head, magically, these things are real. And I know how frightful that is, but that's really it. And for you to convince him or her your version of truth is genuine, you would have to literally rewire the narcissist brain. And this is why, after believing the narcissist gets it within minutes, hours, a few days, weeks, or months, you will have conversations about this topic that the narcissist finally agreed to. And then you will discover that it's all out the window. And the narcissist has defaulted back to his or her original version, and it will always be that way. Everything else was simply fluff. It was a facade. And is it any wonder that you have felt like you are losing your mind and you're totally traumatized? And this is the reason. This is what happens when trying to reason with a narcissist gets safety, stability, understanding, normality. It is about self-damaging, as lying yourself down as on a busy freeway.